Hi everyone, it's Margaret Manning here with Retire Different. This is the place where people come to ask questions how to have a fabulous retirement. And I've got some guests here today. One of them may surprise you. Pam Krueger is a financial and investing specialist. She is an author and television celebrity, and she's also the creator of Wealth Ramp, which is an online tool connects fiduciary advisors with consumers. And her dog is her consultant. This is Chloe.
My sidekick. And by the way, Margaret, Chloe was on Money Track for years. She's 18
Really?
now. She's 18. She's on my show every season. So
Does she add a lot of insight and inspiration?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Definitely inspiration. Do you know, pets are really good for your blood pressure and everything. They're actually really good for your good health. But anyway, financial questions are also very emotional, and we like to have animals to kind of calm
everything. If we're talking about money, you've got to have a dog.
And you've also got to have experts. And so we've got a really great expert with us here, Joshua Escalante Troesh. You got me with your dog here. I get so emotional. I don't have a dog at the moment. But anyway, hello, Joshua. Joshua is a professor of business and a financial advisor. He is the owner of Purposeful Strategic Partners, which is an investment advisory firm, and he is a fee-only fiduciary advisor. So he's one of the men who's on Pam's Wealth Ramp tool, been vetted and approved, unbiased financial advice. And he's the founder of Purposeful Finance, which is a nonprofit educational organization. So welcome, Joshua.
Good morning.
It's great to have both of you here. And we started off with a joyful celebration of beautiful Chloe, but we're going to talk about something a little more serious. Are you guys up for talking about credit in retirement? It's a big
credit
topic.
And credit means debt.
Debt. Yes. Yes. The credit as in credit cards. But I mean, it's very easy though when you get into retirement to miss the things that you had when you were at work, the kind of lifestyle that you had established. And part of that was credit cards. You seem that you lived on credit as part of your way of life when you had a steady income.
Yeah.
But now that you maybe don't have that, you don't have that paycheck and you may only have a pension or Social Security, those credit cards are still sometimes there and very tempting. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in credit cards. Do you want to start and then we can pull in Joshua?
Yeah, let's just put some context to it if you want to.
Yes.
Okay. So I was looking at some stats, and something like, the typical 65-year-old household led by a 65-year-old, median debt now is about $35,000.
Oh, wow.
So that's about 2.5.
United States, this is, of course, yeah.
This is in the U.S., and this is about 2.5 times what it was about 18 years ago. So it's doubled, and it's about 4 times as much debt as 30 years ago. So there's a lot of people, boomers, who I think, we just got so addicted and used to dealing with having credit cards that we just continue to use them.
Yeah.
But the usage is going up, not down. And so is the stress that goes along with owing money on credit cards when you're getting into retirement. So there's a lot of pitfalls, and there's a right way and a wrong way. When you're younger, when you're in your 20s, on our show, we used to say, there's good debt and there's bad debt. And the good debt is anything that you're investing in. You're buying, you're putting student loans because you're going to get an education that is going to lead to higher income later. Bad debt would be something where you're buying clothes and food, because that's never going to go up in value. It's only going to go down. It's guaranteed to go down. Therefore, you're just going to have to pay for it later. Now you get into this age bracket, and the good debt reasons become fewer. So this is where I'd love to get Josh's color around using credit, in retirement.
Yeah. When is it a good thing and when is it a bad thing, Josh?
So I want to start with sort of reframing the concept of debt, because when we hear debt, when we hear loans, there's a lot of emotion charged with those terms.
Yeah.
And I want you to imagine instead a DeLorean. And the door of that DeLorean opens up, and inside is Michael J. Fox and a flux capacitor. Because ultimately what debt is a time machine. And loans, allow you to transport money back in time from your future to your current self, which is a nice tool, but you do that too much and your future self will always be poor.
That's a great analogy.
And so we want to think about it.
Marty, I know I'm seeing the movie, you know?
Right.
No, but
So we want to think about it from that perspective. So I am not against having debt in retirement. I'm not against, for example, a lot of people want people to pay off their mortgage in retirement. But that presumes that all of your retirement years are equal. And think about this. Would you rather have an extra $60,000 of spending in your 60s or an extra $90,000 of spending in your 90s? And if we think about what our lifestyle is going to be like, there's like a big difference between those two. Even credit cards. I'm not against people using credit cards in retirement. I'm not even against people having credit card debt. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you found out that you have congestive heart failure and you need emergency heart surgery. And it's going to cost you $10,000 and you do not have the money. And the only thing you can do is put it on a credit card and pay it off over the course of the next 2 years. Put it on a credit card because
good debt
does not help you, right?
No, I mean, I've got a perfect example to share with you of my own experience. When I was working in a full-time position in the States, I would go every 3 or 4 years to the doctor and have a full physical checkup. And it would cost me $4,000 and it was a lot of money, but it was like I had the report and I knew the areas I needed to work on. And then when I stopped working, 7 years passed and I realized I hadn't done my checkup. And I actually was looking at my reports and thinking, And so I went ahead and put on my credit card to go and have a full medical checkup. Because I would have done that when I was working, but I didn't do it when I was in retirement. And it's not part of my retirement benefits in running a small business, running a business. So yeah, I did exactly the same thing, and I'm glad I did. So
that's such a great example.
It was really, honestly, and it was really hard for me because $4,000 for me is a lot of money. And it was, do I put that on a card?
Yeah, that's using credit for good, not evil. Right.
We have to be careful not to lie to ourselves.
Yes, you're right.
Say, taking that third vacation year, so I'm going to take some money out of my mortgage to take a third vacation.
I needed that cruise for my good health.
That may not be, now it still could be, right? It still could be, it's perfectly fine and everything else, but you have to be really careful to realize that we are transporting money back in time.
It's got to be paid for at some point.
Yeah. I've got a weird question.
Know it.
Okay. I've got a weird question. I mean, do you think a lot of people, Pam, as they get older, are using credit cards for debt because they don't want to go into their savings?
I see that. Yeah, I do.
Because I think that psychology seems to be
it's all of these little mental games we play with ourselves when we compartmentalize our money. And frankly, when we don't talk about it with anybody and we kind of get our own little, eccentricities, I guess I would say, around it, a little neurotic we can get. And when you kind of compartmentalize everything like that, and then you start thinking that way, you reinforce it all the time. And I think it's healthier to discuss, collaborate, and be open to other ways to be thinking so that you don't fall into those kinds of traps. Another thing too is the level of stress that this kind of debt, whether it's credit card debt, whether it's a second mortgage, whether it's a home equity loan, or Margaret and Josh, it might be a lot of people who I know in my own life, they want to continue to help their adult kids. Yeah. And these are some of the usages of why they're using credit. Because they don't, like you said, Margaret, that's another really good reason. It's like mentally, I don't want to tap into my savings, so therefore I'll just rack up a bill that's kind of imaginary.
Yeah, I know. I know this happens.
Right. Or they want to help their kids. These are reasons that are a little unrealistic.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, the cruise example. Let's say that we add some dimension to that cruise idea. And it turns out that, someone who's very close to you, is very ill. And this is the last cruise of their life. And this might be the last memory you ever have with that person. And you can't afford that trip. But not taking that trip is more, you're losing something by not doing it.
Gosh, isn't this heavy though? This is so emotional. This is where money just gets so complicated.
Well, but the reality is money.
It's a great example, Pam.
That is what money is for. Right? Money doesn't do you any good if you're dying with a big bank account. And you really have to look at it from the context of your life, because if all you're focused on is how to increase the money in your accounts, then money just becomes a number on a piece of paper that gets mailed to you once a month.
Yeah.
Josh, this all ties in, Margaret, with the credit use.
Yeah.
What you're tapping into is something that nobody ever actually comes out and says. It's the next level of money. It's connecting. What do you have money for?
Mm-hmm.
What do you have credit for? Margaret, when you take and unpack the bag and think of it like connecting your lifestyle and what's important to you to that thing that's in the bank called money, or to that number on a piece of paper, and to the credit, the $60,000 credit line that you have, but you suddenly start to think about how this all connects to what you're actually doing, and pretty soon you're not treating money like it's some foreign object. You're treating it like it flows through my life, and I don't want to take on that extra stress by helping my adult child next month. I don't want that extra stress of this home equity loan, and I'm not going to take that trip. But it helps you make decisions better if you think of it holistically. They're disconnected.
It's so interesting to have this conversation about money in this kind of emotional way, because a lot of people in their 50s and 60s and 70s are downsizing their things. They're downsizing their stuff. So that's a real emotional process of saying no to things. And, it's like, I won't buy this, I won't do that. And that in itself is stressful. And I'm of the belief, I actually written an article about this, it's about saying yes. It's about saying the money is saying yes to things that truly are important to you. Like not saying yes to the trip that you don't need to take, or it's a more positive mindset about choosing how you
I'm willing to bet that Josh I'm willing to bet that Josh has examples of real world clients who he has sat down with and talked with who are really successfully using credit. I'd like to hear how people in the 60s are using credit really smartly.
So let me give you an example, which is kind of an unusual example, but you'd be surprised how common this experience is for people who are in their retirement years. And that is a person who has, and student loan debt, let's start off with this. You have to be very careful as a retiree taking out student loan debt, especially for a child or a grandchild especially. That's the more common thing. Because student loan debt is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to discharge in bankruptcy. And they can attach your Social Security to pay off that debt if the grandchild doesn't.
Wow.
We really have to understand the dangers of that. But a person who's in their 60s or 70s, and they always regretted not finishing their bachelor's degree. They always regretted not going on and getting their college degree. And it's not going to improve their life, but it's always been a goal that they have. And the government is willing to offer them a subsidized loan, meaning they're going to let them borrow the money and pay the interest the entire time they're in school. By all means, definitely go and do that. Achieve that life goal.
Yes, yeah.
And then pay it off. And then when you've got the money, if you've got the money, pay it off as soon as you're done with the school, or get a part-time job practicing that new career that you did just for fun. Use that money to pay it off.
Because that adds to your well-being.
Exactly.
Overall. But as far as just pure cash flow goes, Josh, if you could, give us some examples of people, how they use credit successfully on an ongoing basis, not just for a one-off purchase, but just like, how do you keep credit as your friend in your life, in your 60s, and not your enemy?
Yeah. So one of the things that is important to understand is, for example, buying a car. People say, well, you should never finance a car. You always finance a car.
That's right.
Even when you pay cash, you finance a car. Because if you're going to take $30,000 out of your investments, you are the one financing the car, not the bank. And so one of the things that you might look at is, well, if the interest rates are, you can get a 0.9% interest rate nowadays for a car, and you are doing that versus taking money out of your retirement investments and keeping it from working, it may get better to get that 0.9% interest rate on a car. Now, of course, the danger there becomes is you decide because you're financing it, you're going to get a $60,000 car instead of a $30,000 car. Because you would only buy a $30,000 car if you were to use your investments, but you're going to double the cost of your car by taking the loan out because for some reason it psychologically feels better.
Oh, that is so smart.
That's
That first of all, number one, Margaret, if you got your money parked, pun intended, in a account that's earning 1.5%, and let's say that you can negotiate a car loan or a lease that's
0.9.
like 0.9, then right there it makes sense. But Josh, your point about hold on here, because something always happens when you walk into the car dealer and you walk out with a much different set of much different package that you expected when you walk in. But you're giving us exactly what I was hoping. An example of how successful people, give me the success stories of how people who are really smart use credit. They don't let credit rule them. They don't let the car dealership rule them.
Smart. Yeah.
They go in there knowing I'm buying a car for 30 grand. And I know why I'm doing it. I know how I'm doing it. And I'm doing it on credit. And there's a reason for it. Now I'm going to walk in there and there ain't nobody who's going to talk me into anything more than that. It's huge.
No, it's great. Is there ever a good reason to take money on a credit card to invest in something? Like,
no.
I suppose, well, there's two parts to that. I mean, one is invest in like a stock that you think is going to be like blockchain or whatever, or the other one would be to start a business.
So, okay, so let's answer those two separately. When it comes to investing in stocks, bonds, anything along those lines, you are extraordinarily unlikely to the point of it almost being statistically impossible.
A joke.
Be able to overcome the interest rate on a credit card with any investment, and any investment that would be able to overcome that interest rate, the risk is going to be so incredibly high, you're still statistically unlikely to do it.
Okay, so no to that one. That's the bad. Okay.
Now let's talk about the business side.
Yeah.
Starting a business. Now the reality is returns on successful businesses are astronomical. Right? I mean, the amount of money you come into play. My favorite example that I use with my students is the TV show The Walking Dead. The creators of that went into $80,000 of credit card debt before they made it big. But that $80,000, even that extreme example, was well worth it. So you could make a mathematical case. The problem is, it is too easy to find other ways to start the business and come up with the money to start the business. Right. There are SBA loans. There's this process that I teach my entrepreneurship students called bootstrapping, where you start a small version of the business, you start finding customers, and you allow your customers to finance the growth of the business.
Right.
SBA loans, even with your home equity attached to it, would be far better than
credit card
using it.
Is there an age limit to those though?
No, it's there. Now there are income requirements and other things along those lines, and so that could be a problem.
Yeah, if you're not working, it could
not
be
having a job from the start. If you're
but there's also some other things you can do too.
Take it from someone who is living that dream. Okay, I had to create Wealth Ramp. I started it 4 years ago. There's not one dime of Wealth Ramp on any of my credit cards, not even the business cards. And the reason for that, Margaret, is because I personally am freaked out by the idea that that's going to just grow. That's a certainty.
Yeah.
That's going to grow like this. And my business, like everybody else's business, unless you're super lucky, it always takes longer than you think. Yeah. And it always costs more than you think. So if you blow your credit borrowing day one to fund your business, and then you're now in year 3 and you're tapped out, then it's going to be harder for you to get other loans and get investors, because they're going to go, I don't know, you've already tapped out all your credit. So credit is not a good way to, you hear about it on the American Express. And you can, and I could do it if I wanted to right now. I haven't done it yet.
There's too many other options that are better.
Yeah. Also, I think a lot of people now, well, a lot of older people, I think over 60, I'm talking about myself personally, is they're used to doing things for themselves, like they're independent. They've been told, do it yourself, be strong, whatever. And a lot of people now are beginning to realize that the shared economy is upon us, that it's good to work together. And that if you're trying to start a business, get your friend, get a few partners involved. I mean, get more than yourself. Don't try to carry the whole weight on your credit card.
Yeah, that's almost a different...
or like some of those.
Yeah, it's almost a whole different topic. Like, how do you fund a business when you're over 60? And I'm 60, and I started my business when I was, 56.
Yeah.
So
That's a good topic. We should keep that one in.
yeah, it's a whole different topic, but you know, your point is, it was well taken, because these things all blend in together. But another thing, Josh, with regard to using credit right now, with regard to, you know, uncertainty, when you've used credit and you have kind of overdone it a little bit on the fun stuff and on the food and on the clothing, which just goes down in value and you have to pay for it. And of course, the price tag of those clothes and that food goes up because the interest, it's really bad math. That's what you want to stay away from. But, you know, right now there's some uncertainty in the stock market. There's some volatility, there's trade war talk and all this kind of stuff that really impacts people. And when you've got that kind of stress already, you just don't want to have extra stress of using credit for things that are guaranteed to go down in value, because it's all about stress levels, you know?
Yeah, when the reality is, mathematically paying off your mortgage early doesn't make sense. There's only one benefit to paying off the mortgage early, which is the psychological benefit.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
you cannot underestimate the value of that psychological benefit, right? I mean, it's a huge benefit. And that may not mean that you should do it or you shouldn't do it, but you always have to factor in, what does it do to your stress? What does it do to your relationships? You know, a lot of times one spouse wants to do one thing and another spouse wants to do the other thing. And the spouse that is the driver is perfectly fine with it, not realizing what it's doing to their spouse and not realizing what it will do over time to the relationship.
Which kind of also leads me to getting back around to connecting the money in your life and the flow of the money in and out of your life to all your credit cards as well, because that is money you could tap into. Do you have a sort of an idea of when you see successful people in retirement using credit without stress? Do they usually end up paring their number of credit cards down over time to maybe having 2 or 3? You know, because I think sometimes when you see people in their career days, you know, they might have as many as 5 different credit cards.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's less about them being successful, and it's more about them understanding how their money sort of impacts their life and their use of money impacts their lives. I don't see a big difference, and other people may have this, and I don't have academic statistical research on it, but I don't see a big difference with people's success with money and their number of credit cards. What I do see, however, is people's overall happiness in their life and happiness with their monetary situation, not because the number of credit cards creates unhappiness, but because they're finding ways to simplify their life.
Right, simplifying, exactly.
Yeah, they're finding ways not to have 15 statements that they all have to manage and come in. Having 1 or 2 makes it so much easier.
Well, that's what I was just saying about downsizing. It's such a big trend at the moment in our community of older women, and it's, you know, easy to reduce the photographs or the postcards or the collectibles or whatever, but we forget that at the heart of it all is money. You know, that downsizing, and that is actually in some ways the hardest thing, because we are so connected to the person that we were when we were working. You know, psychologically, we're so connected to our worth. Our actual feeling of self-worth is to the money that we have and the things that we can buy. You know,
some of the people, you know, the people that are the most stressed out that I see are generally not the people who are just barely living on Social Security. Right? Because they kind of figure out how to deal with that and they're just happy with it.
I agree.
The people that I see that are most stressed out are the people that have 9 different 401ks from 9 different jobs, and they started 6 different IRAs in different places, and they just have all of this stuff. And it's hard to even understand it all, because how do you even add it all up on a regular basis?
And then you add on to that credit cards, you know, that come, like you said,
car loans and a boat loan, and
you open up your mail. We all know this feeling. It used to be fun when you were 10 years old to go to the mailbox.
Open up now you walk past it.
Oh, no.
Well, I have a 2-year-old, so it's still fun to open up the mail now. So
here's the deal. I think that we've actually done, I think, quite an unusual job here of talking about credit in a way that, well, we're smiling all of us here at the end, but I think that we also have talked about the good. You know, the good ways to use credit and the sort of not so good ways. And then there's a couple of ugly ways. And I think we really have covered the whole spectrum. And I would really encourage people to downsize your thinking about money as well as your actual spending it. But thank you, Joshua, for your insights. It's really been great. You have got a wonderful way of crystallizing the answers. And Pam, you've got a great way of asking them, because you're both real people. Money is not an abstract thing to you. But Pam's website is wealthramp.com, and that's where you can check out her, the way she connects you, the consumer, to people like Joshua, fiduciary advisors who are there with your best interests at heart, not with their pocketbook and their product.
Joshua's on WealthRamp, yes.
That's great. And then Joshua, someone who's actually, I'm so glad you're teaching young people as well as older people. This is what young people need to hear, and hopefully they'll come back with some creative solutions to the messes that some of us have left them with. But and your website is purposefulsp.com, right? S for strategic, P for partners.
Correct.
Chloe just is over here, but she's
Chloe.
listening.
Chloe, thank you for your contribution to the goodness that you give to your beautiful owner, Pam. She's look at her, she's smiling because of you. Thanks a lot for introducing us to Chloe, Pam. It was great. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and please leave your questions below for Pam and Joshua. Cheers. Bye-bye for now. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our Retire Different YouTube channel and check out our website at retiredifferent.com. We are a community of people who are asking questions and trying to make good financial decisions so that we can have an amazing retirement. We'll be looking at our relationship to money and also places that we can go for support, advice, and inspiration.